You said earlier you were a, quote, hell no on the Republican CR. Are you still a hell no?
Oh, absolutely. And here's what it comes down to. If you want to stop a bully, you don't hand over your lunch money. And if you want to stop a tyrant, you don't hand them more power. What we have seen in this extraordinary set of circumstances is a president who's taken down the watchdogs in terms of the inspector generals, fired the FBI agents who look over executive branch, who is trying to intimidate the press, and who is trying to intimidate Congress. And we have seen republics around the world fall because Congress becomes intimidated. Well, the Republicans on both sides are intimidated. The House Democrats don't have the power to stop on the House side, so the only power rests with us to use our 60-vote power to force a negotiation. I feel like the path we are on for tomorrow night, in which Democrats will provide votes, will not accomplish that negotiation. In fact, clearly it won't. Back in 2019, when we were facing a Republican president, Trump, we used this power. We forced a negotiation. And what we did then is even more true now. That's the path we should be on. We have to fight a tyrant now. It is never true that you let them accumulate more power and it will be easier later.
Senator Smith, you said you were a no on the Republican resolution. Are you still a no?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, this is a moment where the Republicans are helping Donald Trump and Elon Musk do a giant power grab on our government. Either way, they're hell-bent to shut down the government. And I think that it is essential in this moment that we stand up to it. Just as Jeff is saying, this is a moment where we have to say, no, we are not going to go along with this bully. Because if we go along with it now, it's going to come back again and again and again. And I think it's important that people understand that this so-called continuing resolution is not a continuation of laws that Congress passed in the prior year, last year. It is a complete wholesale rewriting of those laws. It takes away research money for Alzheimer's and fetal alcohol syndrome. It would stop hundreds of projects in Minnesota that help us build child care centers in Moorhead and public safety projects in Rochester, Minnesota. And it gives Elon Musk and Donald Trump the power to basically decide, is this money that we want to reward our friends with, or are we going to punish our enemies by not spending that money?
And that was where I was going to ask you about, because do you trust President Trump and Elon Musk and Russell Vought to actually spend the money in the ways that even that CR says they should be spent?
Well, one thing about this CR, it does not have the type of table in it that says how different funds will be allocated. So let's take, for example, the Great American Outdoor Act. Normally, there would be a table that would lay out how it would be fairly distributed around the country to different projects. Those tables are not in this. This means what we are handing Trump is a slush fund that he can use to reward states he's happy with, red states, and to penalize states he's unhappy with, blue states. That type of situation absolutely feeds into his desire already to have a way to kind of turn the knife in members of Congress to work his will. Congress, under the separation of powers, has to be fierce in defending that separation and defending the checks and balances.
So, Senator Smith, then, what are you hearing from your colleagues ahead of tomorrow's vote? Because you have colleagues, Democratic colleagues, who are in a tough position. They are on the ballot next year. What are you hearing from them or others who might be thinking of actually voting for the CR tomorrow?
Well, what I'm hearing from my colleagues is, first of all, nobody wants the federal government to shut down. Everybody wants to hold the Republicans. And this is really about what the Republicans in the House and in the Senate are doing. This is their power grab. And people are furious about it. And everyone is trying to figure out what is the right thing to do to protect our country in this moment. Jeff and I believe, and I think many of our colleagues believe, that this is a moment where we really have to stand up. But at the end of the day, everyone is trying to figure out what the right thing to do is. And it's, we're faced with two terrible choices. And that's the reality that the Republicans have put on our feet. And, my view of it is, if they want me to vote for their plan, then they need to negotiate with me and my colleagues to make sure that the interests of the people that I represent are reflected in their bills. And they haven't done that.
They don't seem to be interested in doing that.
Absolutely not. No.
So if there is a government shutdown, Senator Merkley, how do Democrats get the message out that it is, in fact, a Republican shutdown?
Well, here's the way we do it. We take Patty Murray, Senator Murray from Washington, head of the Appropriations Committee, has laid out a 30-day plan in which we would have the government come open and we would negotiate. We'd either negotiate over the appropriation bills, which have all passed out of the Senate appropriation bills. That's the spending bills, 12 different bills, all passed out either unanimously or almost unanimously. Or if that path didn't avail itself, we could get a bipartisan continuing resolution that doesn't do these terrible things that the House version does. But to have that path work, we absolutely have to use the power we have in the Senate to deny the House Republican version. And here's the thing. We could go back to the floor every 2 hours and say, we're asking unanimous consent to spend an hour debating a return of opening the government for this 30 days for this purpose. And the Republicans would vote it down time after time. They would say no to the unanimous consent, and it would be so clear to the American people there's only one person and there's only one party to blame for a shutdown, and that's Trump, and that's the Republicans. And the American people are already inclined to think that because they understand the Republicans control the House, the Senate, the Oval Office. A recent poll said independents fully understand by 29% that it's the Republicans who would be responsible if there was a shutdown. And what we would see is Trump, last time on the 2019 shutdown, 35 days,
right,
he suffered politically. The point that I disagree with some of my colleagues who have said Trump wants the shutdown is what I have heard is that he was lobbying for the House bill and didn't want to shut down, knows how it hurt him last time, and knows that DOJ would be shut down under a shutdown.
You know, Senator Smith, what do you hear? Let's switch gears and talk about tariffs and the impacts of tariffs, or even the uncertainty over tariffs. What are you hearing from your constituencies about the impact of all this on local economies in Minnesota? And then we'll talk about Oregon.
It's a huge deal. So, here's a guy who campaigned on delivering prosperity to Americans on day one. And what's happened? Costs are up. The tariffs have created massive chaos. People's retirement savings, as we had at the beginning of your show, are disappearing overnight. And what I'm hearing at home is just especially from farmers and producers, is the trauma of having no idea what to expect. And you can see that being reflected in the stock market as well, but you can see it reflected in the faces of farmers in Minnesota who are wondering where their markets are going to be, what's going to happen. And then when at the same time, the president and DOJ are cutting the farm to school programs that create markets at home for American food products in schools, they are just feeling like there's nobody who has their back in the Trump administration.
Is that what you're hearing in Oregon, Senator?
We are hearing exactly the same thing. I mean, during the last Trump tariff battles, we had bans on our Christmas trees, on our wine, on our fruits. And in fact, right now, we're looking at the situation where with Europe, if we're banning their alcohol from coming to the U.S., my wine industry is very concerned about our wine. The best Pinot Noir on the planet, I might add, will be banned from going to Europe. No, it can affect us in all kinds of ways. There's an extremely high level of stress over this.
Senator Smith, let me get you on one thing before we have to go. Federal judges appear to be holding the line against Trump and Musk's dictator moves. Does it make you feel confident this can be stopped?
Well, I think it's going to be stopped by Americans saying enough already. We are not going to put up with this. And it's going to be stopped by those of us in Congress who fight. But what is happening in the lower courts does give me real hope. We had this judge today who said, this is a scam effort to defend the firings that you're doing. And I think that we're seeing some really good things coming out of the courts so far.